When the maid fell sick, her toddler went to work in her place. The billionaire couldn't believe his eyes. "Get out of my house, you dirty little rat!" the woman screamed, raising her hand toward the 3-year-old girl. But before she could strike, a tiny voice stopped her cold. "If you touch me, my mommy's boss will fire you before sunset." The room went silent. The billionaire's fiancé's face turned pale white. Who was this toddler? Why did she speak with such strange confidence? How did a 3-year-old know secrets that could destroy a powerful woman's entire future? What happened next in that mansion would change 4 lives forever, and nobody saw it coming. Welcome back to our channel, where real emotions meet powerful true-to-life stories. Every story we share is inspired by love, struggle, and the quiet strength of the human heart. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because stories like this one will change the way you see the world. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? Today's story is filled with emotional moments, an inspiring journey, a powerful life lesson, and unexpected twists you will never see coming. By the end of this video, you might not be able to hold back your tears. Now let's go back to where it all started. A sick mother, a silent mansion, and a 3-year-old who refused to stay quiet. What would you do if the people you worked for treated you like you didn't exist? The Cross Mansion sat on top of a hill in Greenwich, Connecticut, surrounded by tall iron gates and rows of white roses that bloomed every spring. From the outside, it looked like a place where dreams came true. From the inside, for one woman and her daughter, it felt like a prison with a beautiful view. Maria Lopez had worked as a housekeeper for Nathaniel Cross for almost 2 years. She was 30 years old, with tired eyes that still held warmth, and hands that had scrubbed more marble floors than she could count. Maria was a widow. Her husband had died in a car accident when their daughter, Lily, was barely a year old. Since then, it had been just the 2 of them against the world. Nathaniel Cross was 34 years old, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. He had built a technology empire from nothing, working 18-hour days since he was 22. He was a serious man, often lost in his laptop screen, rarely noticing the people who kept his enormous house running. He wasn't cruel. He was simply absent, busy, blind to the small things happening right under his roof. And that was exactly the problem. Because the woman he was about to marry, Victoria Sinclair, was not blind at all. Victoria noticed everything, every flaw, every imperfection, every person beneath her on the social ladder. And she made sure they knew their place. "Maria!" Victoria's voice echoed down the long hallway one morning, sharp as broken glass. "Why is there dust on this vase? Do you know how much this costs? More than your entire year's salary." Maria lowered her head. "I'm sorry, Miss Sinclair. I'll clean it right away." "Sorry doesn't fix stupidity," Victoria snapped, flipping her perfectly styled hair. "Honestly, Nathaniel, I don't understand why you keep her around. There are 100 maids in this city who actually know how to do their job." Nathaniel, sitting at the dining table with his phone in hand, barely looked up. "She's fine, Victoria. Let it go." It wasn't kindness. It was indifference. And indifference, Maria had learned, could hurt just as much as cruelty, because it meant no one was watching closely enough to see the truth. In the corner of the room, sitting quietly on a small stool with a coloring book in her lap, was 3-year-old Lily. She had her mother's dark curly hair and enormous brown eyes that seemed far too wise for someone so small. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She simply watched. Lily had been coming to the mansion with her mother for almost a year now, ever since their old babysitter moved away and Maria couldn't afford daycare. Most days, Lily sat quietly in a corner of the kitchen or the laundry room, drawing pictures, stacking blocks, or watching cartoons on an old tablet with the sound turned low. She was told again and again, "Be invisible, baby. Don't make noise. Don't touch anything. We need this job." And Lily, even at 3 years old, understood. She understood more than any child her age should have to. But understanding and accepting are not the same thing. One afternoon, Victoria walked into the kitchen wearing a cream-colored designer dress, sunglasses pushed up into her hair even though she was indoors. She was hosting a small lunch for her wealthy friends that day, and everything had to be perfect. She spotted Lily sitting on the floor near the pantry, quietly playing with a wooden spoon and an old pot, pretending to cook like her mother. "What is this child doing in my kitchen?" Victoria said loudly, loud enough for her friends in the next room to hear. "This is not a daycare center." Maria rushed in from the laundry room, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm sorry, Miss Sinclair, she has nowhere else to." "I don't care where she goes," Victoria interrupted. "Just get her out before my guests arrive. The last thing I need is for my friends to think I let staff bring their children to work like this is some kind of charity." Lily looked up at Victoria. Her small face didn't show fear. It showed something else, something quiet and steady, like a candle flame that refuses to be blown out by the wind. "My mommy works hard," Lily said softly but clearly. "She's not lazy. She's tired because she takes care of this whole big house." The kitchen went still. Victoria's perfectly painted lips parted in shock. A toddler had just spoken back to her, calmly, without crying, without stuttering. "Excuse me." Victoria's voice turned icy. Maria's heart dropped into her stomach. "Lily, sweetheart, please." "It's true, Mommy," Lily said, turning to her mother with innocent honesty. "You clean all day. You're not lazy." Victoria let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Unbelievable. Even the help's child has an attitude problem. Maria, control your daughter, or I will make sure both of you are gone by the end of the week." That night, after the guests had left and the mansion had gone quiet, Maria sat on the edge of the small bed in the staff quarters, a modest room at the back of the house, far from the marble and gold of the main residence. Lily lay curled beside her, already half asleep. "Why does that lady not like us, Mommy?" Lily whispered, her eyes heavy. Maria stroked her daughter's hair, fighting back tears. "Some people, baby, they have everything in their hands but nothing in their hearts. We can't control how she treats us. We can only control how we treat others. Be kind even when it's hard. Be honest even when no one's watching. That's what makes a person rich, not money." Lily's small fingers wrapped around her mother's hand. "I'll remember that, Mommy. I promise." Neither of them knew in that quiet moment just how soon that promise would be tested. Because 3 days later, Maria woke up burning with fever, too weak to even stand, and there was no one else to do her work. No one except a 3-year-old girl who had been watching, listening, and learning every single day. What happens when a child is forced to grow up overnight? You're not going to believe what Lily decided to do next. A toddler picked up a mop bigger than herself, and what happened next stunned everyone watching. Have you ever seen a child do something so brave? It left grown adults speechless. Keep watching because this is only the beginning. Maria's fever had spiked to 103 degrees overnight. By morning, she could barely lift her head off the pillow. Her whole body ached, her throat felt like sandpaper, and every time she tried to stand, the room spun violently around her. "Mommy, you're really hot," Lily said, pressing her tiny palm against her mother's forehead the way she had seen her mother do to her once when she had a cold. "You need medicine." "I'm okay, baby," Maria whispered weakly, though her voice cracked with exhaustion. "I just need a few minutes, and then I have to go clean the West Wing before Mr. Cross has his meeting." She tried to push herself up. Her arms trembled and gave out, and she collapsed back onto the pillow with a small cry of pain. Lily's eyes filled with worry, but she didn't cry. Instead, something shifted in her small face, a quiet determination that seemed far too old for a 3-year-old. "Don't worry, Mommy," Lily said, climbing off the bed. "I'll go clean. I know how. I watch you every day." No, baby, you can't," Maria tried to protest, but her words faded into a fit of coughing. "I'll be careful," Lily said, already pulling her small sneakers onto her feet. "I promise I won't break anything. You rest." Before Maria could find the strength to stop her, Lily had slipped out of the staff quarters and into the long marble hallway of the main house, dragging a cleaning rag almost as big as she was. The mansion was enormous and silent that early in the morning. Sunlight poured through tall glass windows, lighting up dust particles floating in the air. Lily had seen her mother dust these same shelves 100 times. She remembered the careful, circular motions. She remembered which vases were fragile and needed 2 hands. She remembered everything. In the West Wing study, Nathaniel Cross was already awake, reviewing financial documents at his enormous mahogany desk, a cup of black coffee growing cold beside him. He barely glanced up when he heard small footsteps shuffling into the room. It wasn't until he heard the soft squeak of a rag against glass that he finally looked up and froze. A tiny girl, barely older than a toddler, was standing on her tiptoes, carefully wiping down the glass cabinet that held his late father's antique watch collection. Her small tongue poked out in concentration. Her brows furrowed exactly like an adult focused on an important task. What are you doing?" Nathaniel asked, setting down his pen. Lily turned around, not startled, not afraid. She looked at him with calm, steady eyes. "Cleaning, sir. My mommy is sick today. But I know how to do it. I've watched her 100 times. Nathaniel blinked, momentarily speechless. "Your mother is sick. Does anyone know about this?" "She told me to let her rest," Lily said simply. "I didn't want you to be mad that nobody cleaned your house." For the first time in a long while, Nathaniel Cross found himself completely lost for words. He was a man who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without blinking, who had stared down boardrooms full of intimidating investors, yet a 3-year-old girl, calmly dusting his cabinet with a rag too big for her hands, had managed to leave him speechless. "Where is your mother now?" he asked, standing up. "In our room. She's really hot." "Like fire," Lily said, her small voice wavering for just a second, the only crack in her brave composure. "But I told her I'd take care of it. I don't want us to lose this job. We need it." Something in Nathaniel's chest tightened in a way he couldn't quite explain. He walked quickly toward the staff quarters, Lily trotting along beside him, still clutching her cleaning rag. When he opened the door and saw Maria curled up on the bed, pale, sweating and trembling, his expression changed entirely. "Why didn't you call the house doctor?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended out of genuine alarm. Maria tried to sit up, panic flashing across her face. "Mr. Cross, I'm so sorry, I tried to get up. Don't apologize," he said, surprising even himself with the gentleness in his tone. "You're burning up. You should have told someone immediately." "I didn't want to bother anyone," Maria whispered, ashamed. "I know how busy you are. I didn't want to lose." "You're not going to lose anything," Nathaniel interrupted firmly. He turned and called for his assistant to bring the family doctor immediately. While they waited, Lily stood quietly by her mother's bedside, holding her hand, refusing to leave her side even when Nathaniel gently suggested she go play in another room. "I'm staying with my mommy," Lily said simply, and something about the unwavering loyalty in her tiny voice struck Nathaniel deeply. He thought of his own mother, who had passed away when he was young, and how he used to sit by her hospital bed in much the same way, refusing to leave no matter what anyone told him. When the doctor arrived and confirmed Maria had a severe flu with dangerously high fever, strict bed rest was ordered for at least 5 days. 5 days, Maria repeated weakly, panic rising in her chest. 5 days without pay. 5 days that could mean missed rent, missed bills, missed everything they desperately needed. "Don't worry about your pay," Nathaniel said, almost reading her mind. "You'll still be compensated. Just rest and get better." It was, perhaps, the kindest thing he had ever said to her in 2 years of employment. But it was Victoria's reaction, arriving home just an hour later and hearing the news, that would set the next chapter of this story into motion. "She's sick and we're still paying her," Victoria said incredulously, crossing her arms as she stood in the hallway. "Nathaniel, this is exactly the kind of soft-hearted nonsense that gets people taken advantage of. People like her will use any excuse to avoid working." "She has a 103-degree fever, Victoria," Nathaniel said, his patience visibly thinning. "And yet somehow," Victoria said, her eyes narrowing as she glanced toward the hallway where Lily stood holding a small basket of folded napkins she had quietly organized on her own. "Her daughter seems perfectly capable of doing chores. Maybe we don't need Maria at all. Maybe we just keep the kid." It was meant as a cruel, dismissive joke. But Lily, standing there with her small chin lifted, did not flinch. "I can work hard," Lily said quietly. "But I won't let you be mean to my mommy. Even if I'm little, I know what's right and what's wrong." Victoria stared at the toddler, momentarily stunned into silence by the sheer confidence radiating from such a small body. Then she let out a cold, dismissive laugh and walked away, muttering something under her breath about spoiled help. But the seed of unease had already been planted. Because over the next 4 days, while Maria recovered slowly in bed, Lily continued quietly helping around parts of the house, folding small things, organizing low shelves, watering plants she could reach, never disobeying, never disrespectful, simply present, simply trying to help in whatever small way her tiny hands allowed. And Nathaniel Cross, despite his packed schedule and endless meetings, found himself watching her more and more. Watching the careful way she spoke, the honesty in her eyes, the quiet courage that seemed impossible for someone so young. He didn't know it yet, but this small child was about to uncover something in his own household that would shake the foundation of his entire future, something far more dangerous than dust on a vase or a missed chore. What would you do if a child noticed something the adults around her had completely missed? Stay with us because what Lily discovers next changes everything. Locked drawer, secret phone call, and a 3-year-old who heard everything. If you found out the person you trusted most was lying to you, would you believe a child who tried to warn you? Let's find out what Lily uncovers. By the 5th day, Maria's fever had finally broken, but the doctor insisted she remain in bed for 2 more days to fully recover. Grateful but still weak, Maria spent her mornings resting while Lily continued her quiet routine of small chores around the house, careful never to overstep, always polite, always humble. It was during one of these quiet mornings that everything began to change. Victoria had taken to using the East Wing sitting room as her private office while she planned the upcoming engagement gala, a lavish event meant to formally announce her marriage to Nathaniel in front of the city's wealthiest families. She often locked herself away in there for hours, speaking on the phone in hushed, urgent tones. Lily had wandered into the hallway outside that room one afternoon, carrying a small basket of folded hand towels to place in the linen closet just beside Victoria's makeshift office. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar, and Victoria's voice, sharp and tense, drifted out into the hallway. "I told you, Marcus, everything is on track," Victoria was saying, her voice low but agitated. "Once the prenup is signed, it won't matter what's in it. I already have the lawyer adjusting the asset clause. Nathaniel trusts me completely. He hasn't even bothered reading the fine print." Lily, standing frozen in the hallway with her basket of towels, didn't understand most of the words. Prenup, asset clause, fine print. They meant nothing to a 3-year-old's vocabulary, but she understood tone. She understood the difference between a kind voice and a cruel one. And this voice, this hushed, scheming voice, sounded exactly like the voice Victoria used right before she said something cruel. "And the staff," Victoria continued. "I'm working on it. Once we're married, the housekeeper and her brat are the first to go. I can't have witnesses lingering around once the real plan moves forward. Nathaniel's too soft-hearted to fire her himself, but I'll find a way. Lily's small heart pounded. She didn't fully understand what plan Victoria meant, but she understood one very important thing. Victoria was planning something secret, something that involved hurting her mommy, and something Mr. Cross clearly did not know about. She quietly backed away from the door, careful not to make a sound, and hurried back to the staff quarters where her mother was just beginning to sit up in bed, color slowly returning to her face. "Mommy," Lily whispered urgently, climbing onto the bed beside her. "I heard Miss Victoria on the phone. She said bad things. She said something about a paper and a lawyer and that after the wedding we have to go away. She called me a bad word too." Maria's brow furrowed with concern, though she tried to remain calm for her daughter's sake. "Lily, baby, sometimes grown-ups say things in anger that they don't mean. We shouldn't listen to private conversations, okay?" "But Mommy," she sounded like she was planning something. "Like a secret." "A bad secret," Lily insisted, her small face serious in a way that made Maria pause. Maria hesitated. She desperately wanted to dismiss it as childish misunderstanding, but something about the conviction in her daughter's voice unsettled her. Lily had never lied. Not once, not even to avoid trouble. If anything, she was almost painfully honest. Too honest sometimes, the kind of honesty that got her in trouble with someone like Victoria. "What exactly did she say, sweetheart? Try to remember the exact words," Maria asked gently. Lily scrunched her face in concentration. She said, "Prenup. And asset thing. And that Mr. Cross doesn't read the fine paper. And that after wedding we have to go away because we're witnesses." Maria's blood ran cold. Even with a toddler's broken retelling, the pieces were forming a deeply troubling picture. A prenuptial agreement. An asset clause being secretly altered. A lawyer being manipulated. And plans to remove anyone who might know too much, including them. "Lily, listen to me very carefully," Maria said, taking her daughter's small hands in hers. "This is very important. You must never repeat what you heard to Miss Victoria. Do you understand? Not a single word. This could be very dangerous for us." Lily nodded solemnly, sensing the seriousness in her mother's voice. But fate, as it often does in moments like these, had other plans. That very evening, Nathaniel Cross came home earlier than expected, frustrated after a deal had fallen through unexpectedly at the last minute. He wandered through the quiet halls of his mansion, looking for a moment of peace, when he passed by the staff quarters and noticed the door slightly open. He could hear Maria's hushed, worried voice speaking to Lily. "You must never tell anyone what you heard, baby. Especially not Mr. Cross. We can't risk losing this job, and if Miss Victoria finds out you overheard her, things could get very bad for us." Nathaniel froze just outside the door, his hand hovering near the frame, unseen. What heard? What couldn't Lily tell him? His curiosity, sharpened by years of business instinct that told him when something important was being hidden, refused to let it go. He knocked gently and stepped inside. "Maria," he said, his expression unreadable. "What is it that Lily can't tell me?" Maria's face drained of color instantly. "Mr. Cross, it's nothing really, just a child's imagination." "Maria." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Please, tell me the truth." Lily looked up at her mother, then at Nathaniel. Her small face caught between the promise she'd just made and the deep, instinctive sense that something was very wrong and needed to be said. Slowly, hesitantly, Lily spoke. "Mr. Cross, I heard Miss Victoria on the phone. She was talking about a paper and a man named Marcus, and changing something so that after you get married, it won't matter what's written in it. She said you don't read the fine print. And she said after the wedding, me and Mommy have to go away because we're witnesses." The room fell completely silent. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. His mind raced back to the prenuptial agreement his own lawyer had drafted weeks ago, an agreement Victoria had insisted on reviewing privately with her own legal team before the final signing, claiming she simply wanted to understand the terms better. He had trusted her. He hadn't thought twice about it. "Lily," he said carefully, kneeling down to meet her eyes at her level. His voice gentle despite the storm building inside him. "This is extremely important. Can you remember anything else?" she said. "Anything at all?" Lily nodded slowly. She said, "Once it's signed, it won't matter what's in it. And she said you're too soft-hearted to fire Mommy yourself, so she'll find a way." Nathaniel stood up slowly, his expression hardening into something cold and calculating, the same expression he wore in boardrooms when he discovered someone had betrayed his trust. "Thank you, Lily," he said quietly. "You did the right thing by telling me, even though you were scared." He turned to Maria. "I need you to keep this between us for now. Don't let Victoria know what Lily overheard. I need to look into this myself." Maria nodded, her heart hammering with fear and uncertainty, unsure whether this revelation would protect them or destroy them entirely. What would you do if you were in Lily's place, caught between keeping a promise and protecting the people you love? Because what Nathaniel discovers next will change everything you thought you knew about this story. The documents didn't lie. And neither did a 3-year-old girl. Have you ever had to choose between comfortable silence and painful truth? Watch what Nathaniel does next. That night, Nathaniel didn't sleep. He sat alone in his study, the same room where Lily had once quietly dusted his late father's watch collection, and pulled out the prenuptial agreement Victoria had insisted on having reviewed privately weeks earlier. He read it line by line this time, something he embarrassingly admitted to himself he had never properly done, trusting his lawyer and, more foolishly, trusting Victoria's word that everything was standard procedure. Buried deep within an amended clause on page 17, written in dense legal language designed to be overlooked, was a modification that would grant Victoria full ownership of nearly 40% of his company's shares in the event of a divorce, regardless of fault, regardless of duration of marriage, effective immediately upon signing. It wasn't a standard prenup protecting shared assets. It was a calculated trap designed to drain his life's work the moment she chose to walk away, whenever that moment proved most financially advantageous to her. Nathaniel's hands trembled with a mixture of fury and disbelief. He immediately called his head of legal affairs, a longtime friend named David Chen, and within hours a discreet investigation began. What they uncovered over the following 2 days was far worse than even Lily's overheard phone call had suggested. Victoria Sinclair was not, as she had claimed, the daughter of a wealthy real estate family from Boston. That entire backstory had been fabricated. In reality, she had a documented history of engaging 2 previous wealthy men in serious relationships, both of which ended in substantial financial settlements obtained through manipulated legal agreements. Settlements obtained just before evidence of infidelity or financial misconduct on her part would have surfaced publicly. The man on the phone, Marcus, was not a friend, but a private attorney she had secretly hired, paid through an offshore account, specifically to manipulate the language of Nathaniel's prenuptial agreement without his lawyer's knowledge. Nathaniel sat in stunned silence as David laid out the evidence before him. 2 years of his life. 2 years of trust. 2 years of believing he had finally found someone who loved him beyond his bank account. All of it had been an elaborate, calculated deception. And it had taken a 3-year-old child, sitting quietly in a hallway with a basket of folded towels, to unravel it all. The following morning, Nathaniel called Maria and Lily into his study. Maria's stomach twisted with anxiety the entire walk there, terrified they were about to be fired, blamed, or worse, for the chaos Lily's revelation had caused. Instead, Nathaniel knelt down in front of Lily, his expression filled with a gratitude so genuine it nearly brought Maria to tears on the spot. "Lily," he said softly, "what you told me saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. You didn't have to tell me. You could have stayed quiet, and no one would have ever known. But you chose to tell the truth, even though you were scared, even though it could have gotten you and your mom in trouble. That took more courage than most adults I know. Lily looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Mommy always says, be honest even when no one's watching. I was watching. So I had to say something. Nathaniel felt something shift deep inside his chest, a warmth he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, buried beneath boardrooms and bottom lines and the constant pressure of being the man everyone expected him to be. But the story was far from over. Victoria, sensing that something had changed in the household, the sudden whispered conversations between Nathaniel and his legal team, the cold distance in Nathaniel's eyes when he looked at her now, grew increasingly suspicious and desperate. She confronted Maria in the kitchen that afternoon. Her voice low and venomous. What did you tell him? What did your little rat of a daughter say to him? Maria, despite her fear, found a strength inside herself she didn't know she still had. My daughter told the truth, Miss Sinclair. That's all she's ever done. Victoria's face twisted with fury. You have no idea what you've just destroyed. I will make sure you and that brat regret this for the rest of your lives. It was at that exact moment, with perfect, almost theatrical timing, that Nathaniel walked into the kitchen, having heard every word from the hallway. Victoria, he said. His voice eerily calm, the calm of a man who had already made his decision and felt nothing left to lose. I think it's time we had a conversation. About Marcus. About the offshore account. About the 2 settlements in Boston and Chicago. And about page 17 of our prenuptial agreement. The color drained from Victoria's face entirely. Nathaniel, I can explain, she started, her voice suddenly trembling, all traces of her usual icy confidence gone. You don't need to, he said. David has already compiled everything. Every transaction. Every email. Every recorded call to Marcus's office. I've spent the last 2 days learning exactly who I almost married. Victoria's eyes darted toward Lily, who stood quietly beside her mother, watching the unraveling with the same calm steadiness she had shown from the very beginning. This is because of her, isn't it? Victoria spat, pointing a manicured finger at the toddler. A child. You're going to destroy our entire future because a 3-year-old maid's daughter doesn't know how to mind her own business. No, Nathaniel said firmly, stepping protectively closer to where Maria and Lily stood. I'm ending this because you tried to destroy my future first. Lily simply had the courage to tell me the truth that you spent 2 years hiding. Victoria's composure shattered completely. She screamed accusations, threats, insults, calling Maria incompetent, calling Lily a manipulative little liar planted to ruin her. Her voice rising into something almost unrecognizable from the polished, elegant woman who had once charmed an entire city's social elite. Through it all, Lily stood quietly beside her mother, unflinching, her small hand wrapped tightly around Maria's fingers. She didn't cry. She didn't shrink away. She simply watched, the same way she had always watched, with eyes that understood more about right and wrong than the grown woman screaming in front of her ever would. You can yell all you want, Lily finally said, her small voice cutting cleanly through Victoria's tirade, silencing the room instantly. But yelling doesn't make a lie true. And being mean doesn't make you strong. My mommy taught me that real strength is being kind, even when someone is being cruel to you. The kitchen fell into stunned silence. Even Victoria, mid-sentence, seemed momentarily frozen by the simple, devastating truth spoken by a child not even old enough to attend preschool. Security was called. Within the hour, Victoria Sinclair was escorted off the property. Her engagement ring left behind on the marble counter. Her belongings to be shipped separately. Her reputation about to unravel publicly as David's legal team prepared to expose the fraudulent settlements to the appropriate authorities. As the front door closed behind her for the final time, Nathaniel stood in the quiet aftermath of the chaos, looking down at Maria and Lily, the 2 people who, in the most unexpected way, had just saved him from a future of betrayal and financial ruin. I don't know how to thank you, he said quietly to Maria. Both of you. Maria, overwhelmed with emotion, could only shake her head. You don't have to thank us, Mr. Cross. Lily just did what was right. Nathaniel looked down at Lily, who was already back to quietly straightening a stack of mail on the counter, completely unaware of the magnitude of what she had just done. She didn't just do what was right, he said softly, almost to himself. She saved me. What would you do if you were in Lily's place, holding a secret that could change someone's entire life? Stay with us because the most emotional part of this story is still ahead. Promise kept, family found, and a little girl who proved that courage has no age. What does it really mean to be rich? Watch closely because this ending might just change how you see the world. In the weeks that followed Victoria's dramatic departure, the Cross mansion felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the legal storm still unfolding in the background as David's team worked with federal investigators to expose the full extent of Victoria's fraudulent financial history. Reports later surfaced publicly, confirming that Victoria Sinclair had defrauded two other wealthy men using nearly identical schemes, and she now faced serious legal consequences for financial fraud and falsified identity documents. But inside the mansion, far from courtrooms and headlines, something quieter and far more meaningful was taking shape. Nathaniel found himself, almost without realizing it, gravitating toward the staff quarters in the evenings, not out of obligation, but out of genuine warmth. He would sit at the small kitchen table while Maria prepared dinner, listening to Lily excitedly recount her day. Her small hands gesturing animatedly as she described a butterfly she'd seen in the garden or a new word she'd learned. For the first time in years, Nathaniel realized he looked forward to coming home. One evening, as Lily sat coloring at the table, she looked up at him with the same direct, unwavering gaze she'd had since the very first day he'd noticed her dusting his cabinet. "Mr. Cross," she said, "are you happy now? Without Miss Victoria?" Nathaniel paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Yes, Lily. Think I am. Happier than I've been in a long time." "Good," Lily said simply, returning to her coloring with satisfied finality, as if the matter was now officially settled. Maria, watching from the stove, felt tears prick at her eyes. Tears of relief, of gratitude, and of a quiet, overwhelming pride in the daughter she had raised under such difficult circumstances. She thought back to all the nights she had whispered lessons of honesty and kindness to Lily, never imagining her daughter would one day use those very lessons to save a man's entire future. A month later, Nathaniel called Maria into his study, the same room where everything had unraveled and, in many ways, where everything had begun to heal. "Maria," he said, "I want to do something for you and Lily. Not out of pity, and not because I feel obligated, but because what your daughter did changed my life, and I want to make sure her future, and yours, reflects the kind of character she's shown me." He explained that he had set up a full college trust fund in Lily's name, ensuring her education, from preschool through university, would never be a financial burden. He also offered Maria a position not as a housekeeper, but as the head of household operations, with a salary increase that would finally allow her to move out of the cramped staff quarters and into a comfortable house nearby, with the flexibility to be present for every milestone in her daughter's life. Maria, overwhelmed, could barely find the words to respond. "Mr. Cross, this is too much. We don't need." "You don't need it," he interrupted gently. "But you've earned it. There's a difference. For 2 years I barely noticed you, Maria. I barely noticed the work you did, the sacrifices you made, the incredible little girl you raised practically on your own. I'm ashamed it took almost losing everything for me to finally see what was right in front of me the whole time." Tears spilled freely down Maria's cheeks now, tears she had been holding back for years, tears of exhaustion, of relief, of finally being seen. That weekend, Nathaniel organized a small gathering, nothing extravagant, just a simple backyard dinner under string lights, with Maria, Lily, David, and a few close friends who had stood by Nathaniel through the chaos of the past month. As the evening wound down and the sky turned a soft shade of orange, Lily wandered over to where Nathaniel sat, climbing onto the seat beside him with the easy familiarity of someone who had found a place she belonged. "Mr. Cross," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Anything," he said, smiling. "Why do rich people sometimes forget to be kind?" she asked, her small brow furrowed in genuine curiosity. Miss Victoria had so much. But she wasn't happy. She was mean. Nathaniel considered the question carefully, the way he might consider a difficult business decision, except this felt far more important than any deal he'd ever made. "I think," he said slowly, "some people believe that money makes them important, but real importance, real richness, comes from how you treat people who can't do anything for you in return. You taught me that, Lily. Even though you're 3 years old, you taught me something I should have learned a long time ago." Lily smiled, satisfied with the answer, and rested her head against his arm, watching the sunset with the same quiet contentment of a child who, for the first time in a long while, finally felt safe. Maria, watching from across the yard, felt her heart swell with a gratitude too large for words. The road ahead would still hold challenges. It always did. But for the first time since her husband's death, she felt the weight on her shoulders ease, just a little. Her daughter, her brave, honest, unshakable little girl, had not only survived cruelty and humiliation with grace, but had transformed it into something beautiful. Proof that courage and integrity have no age requirement, and that the smallest voice in the room can sometimes speak the loudest truth. In the months that followed, Lily grew up surrounded by love, security, and the unwavering knowledge that honesty and kindness, no matter how small the person speaking, always mattered. Nathaniel never fully returned to being just her mother's employer. He became something closer to family, a steady, caring presence who never forgot the lesson a 3-year-old had taught him about what truly makes a person rich. And Maria, watching her daughter laugh freely in a garden that once felt forbidden to them, understood a truth she would carry with her for the rest of her life. That even in the darkest, most humiliating moments, character cannot be bought, courage cannot be taught overnight, and sometimes, the bravest person in the room is the one nobody expects. So here's the lesson this story leaves us with. True wealth isn't measured in money or status. It's measured in honesty, kindness, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when you're the smallest voice in the room. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. Leave a comment telling us your favorite part and share this with someone you love. Stories like Lily's deserve to be heard around the world. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.